It's win in advance as the Badgers move on to the round of 32. A sometimes weird game, but comfortably the Badgers pull ahead. Points in the paint. John Blackwell with a big game. Stephen Crowell with a big game. Let's talk about it on Wisconsin. Let's go.
You are Locked On Badgers, your daily podcast on the Wisconsin Badgers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is going on, Badger fans? Welcome to Locked On Badgers, your team every single day. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Appreciate you all being here. Great guest today as we're going to break down this game. Today's episode brought to you by 5-Hour Energy. Head over to 5hourenergy.com. Find over 15 flavors to choose from. Need one now? Grab a 5-Hour Energy shot at your local grocery or convenience store. Stock up and stay energized. We got Coach Goth here jumping on. We're going to break this thing down. Wisconsin wins 85-66. They cover the spread. They win by 19. It was also a game that was down to 4 in the second half, about 2/3 or 1/3 of the way through the second half. It felt like an odd game. Well, just big picture before we get into the good, the mid, the ugly. And obviously the good is the Badgers move on. You win in advance in March, nobody cares. But what was this game for you?
Exactly. I had a wide range of emotions, Ryan. You know, you and I were kind of talking, texting back and forth during the game. You know, at halftime, you know, we talked about earlier in the week how it was really important to get off to a good start. And I thought the Badgers did that, which was nice. But then at halftime, you know, they're up 8, but you kind of just had this uneasy feeling that you thought they should have been up more at halftime. And then sure enough, the first 4 minutes of the second half, Montana gets it down to 4 and had all the momentum. And the Badgers gave up 3 consecutive layups to start that second half until Gilly knocked down that big 3 and drew a foul on the other end. And then they kind of took over from there. So it was hairy, kind of what we talked about, but I will give them credit. They did what they had to do. They got a win. And, you know, I think the committee didn't do them any favors with that short turnaround, playing first thing on Thursday after playing the last game on Sunday. And you could tell a lot of the guys didn't have a lot of juice in the tank today, but they got the job done.
Yeah, and I think what you said, Eric's comment down here, I feel like everyone is satisfied with the win, but I feel like the game was extremely sloppy until the last 10 minutes. Good teams will expose those mistakes. Let's hit our good, mid, and ugly here. To me, the good is the points in the paint. I'm going to get into maybe they should have been there a little bit more, but when they got down there, they shot 55% from the field. They scored 38 in the paint. They dominated on the glass, out-rebounded them 40-29. Crowell was 8 of 10. Blackwell was, when he was driving, he was getting into the paint pretty easily. Tanjay was drawing fouls. That was the game plan. And when they got down there, Amos, by the way, credit to you, man. You called Amos the X factor. He was great today, I thought. So to me, they were able to exploit the mismatch when they got it down there. They were efficient in the paint. That's my good.
Yeah, you know, credit to Amos. He made me look really good. But my good today is right along those lines too. It would be Xavier Amos and Gilly. I thought they were, you know, they really stepped up big, especially in those lulls that we were talking about. And the Badgers did a good job. You know, I just thought overall, like you said, points in the paint and getting in the post, I thought Nolan was really good, and I thought Crowell was really good. So the interior guys where we talked about the Badgers had advantage over Montana, I thought they all played really well today and stepped up. And so that would be my good for the game.
How about your mid? I'll let you start with this one.
Yeah, so my mid is kind of what you're alluding to, and I know we're going to get into. For me, it's a shot selection. You know, especially in that first half when the Badgers would start to get a little bit of distance or whatever, you know, they just were taking forced threes, quick threes early in the shot clock when it was clear they had an advantage down low. That, you know, they couldn't guard Crowell in the paint. They couldn't guard Winter in the paint, and Blackwell, you know, could get dribble penetration anytime he wanted. And I just thought in that first half, they fell in love with the 3 again early in the possession and kind of took early shots and let Montana hang around a little longer than necessary.
Yeah, Brian Axton says good was balanced offense. That's a good point too, Brian. I'm right there with you. That's literally what I had on my mid. It's just shot selection. It felt like they played with their food a little bit. It felt like a little bit like an older brother playing his little kid brother and knowing he can just go in the paint whenever he wants, but like, I'm going to take a couple shots because I don't want to just take easy candy all day. they could have they had him in the bonus early in the second half and then followed it up by multiple perimeter shots when you're getting fouled every time you're going in there. And there was a couple ones, man. Blackwell early in the shot clock taking a one pass, then contested, like step back contested three. Why? You don't need to do that with this team. Sometimes this team just can't help themselves from three, and it's a really good perimeter shooting team, but there was easy candy inside. And I felt like there were too many moments where they got shot happy. So I completely agree on that. What's your ugly?
So my ugly, and as we get into what's next for the Badgers and stuff, my ugly is defensively, particularly on the perimeter defense. I think that Gary hits it right there. Dribble drive defense. That's exactly what I was going to talk about. I think on the perimeter, they give up way too much penetration. The start of that second half, like I alluded to earlier, they gave up 3 consecutive layups. And it's all the guards. Blackwell, I think, gives up way too much dribble penetration. Klesmit today wasn't very good on penetration. McGee got blown by. Janicki, 3 specific times, completely just got blown by Montana. When Janicki was in the game, they were going after him. And, it was free paint touches and getting to the rim. And I give Guard and his staff credit. As you notice, Janicki, after that first go around in the first half, didn't get a lot of clock after that. And I think it was because defensively, he just did not have good performance. And Montana was obviously going after him. So that would be my ugly, is just the lack of getting consecutive stops and dribble penetration, which that's going to be give them a lot of issues and problems come Saturday if they don't clean some of this up.
Yeah, once again, I wrote down perimeter defense, same thing. I'll take it a step further. There's been a couple games now in a row, 3 or 4 games in a row, where Janicki really hasn't given you much offensively or defensively. And it just maybe feels like you need to tighten that rotation a little bit in March. I love what he can potentially be going forward. I think he's a great story this year. Still a really good passer, but you're going on a string here of games where he scored 2 points, no points, no points. He's getting beat up defensively. He's now shooting 27% from 3 on the season. It feels like it's getting harder to give him minutes in these moments. So that might be ugly. I hate saying it because I love the story, but he hasn't been playing well the last couple games. And then to your point, the perimeter defense, there's just a stretch there where Montana got 3 layups in a row, off of penetration, off of a curl, off of just easy actions that you should be able to defend a little bit better. So, yep, I'm right there with you. Let me ask you this. Amos, does he get more minutes going forward, do you think? Because he played, I thought, really well at the tail end of the Big Ten tournament as well.
Yeah, and I agree. But, I see what Guard and his staff, I see their issue in trying to give Amos more minutes that, I think you're right in thinking he should get more, and I would too. But if you think about it, Krause, who are you going to take off if you put them in, because you're taking minutes from Crow and Winter. I know after they start them together, they usually only have one of those guys on the floor, but then, Gilmore's usually the first big off the bench, especially if they want to go a little smaller. And we'll probably get into this a little bit here in a minute, but I thought Gilmore, he was their best defender today.
Yeah.
So like if you give Amos more minutes, then you're taking a few more minutes probably away from Gilmore too. So I agree. I agree with everybody. Patrick nails it here. He wants them to get more minutes, but at what expense? Because they're not going to play 3. I still feel Xavier's a bigs. You can't play him at the 3. So if you give him more minutes, who are you going to take those minutes from? Because you're playing 3 guards regardless. So, I feel like I'm not giving a good answer here, but I just don't know who you take those minutes from.
Yeah, you're probably giving the right answer, though. It might not be a good answer, but it's probably the correct one. I do think it looked like early in the game, Guard went to Amos when Winter got beat a couple times by Pridgeon.
Yep.
And that's a tough matchup for Winter. That's not on Winter. He's like Pridgeon is a good player, but he's 6'5". He has more quickness. You bring Amos in. Amos gives you a little more defensively from a quickness standpoint. It felt like that was a matchup adjustment for the Badgers. But yeah, that's a good point. I don't know who you play him more than. I mean, Crowell was 8 of 10 today. Gilmore was really good. Winter was stretching the floor. I thought he was pretty active. Yeah, I don't know. It's a good point. We're going to take a quick break here. We're going to come back and talk about I want to talk about that zone defense and Wisconsin's response to that. I want to talk a little bit more about rotations and what's coming up next for Wisconsin as they move on in advance. But first, we got to take a quick break for our friends of the show as the Badgers get out of this one with a victory. Today's episode brought to you by our incredible friends over at Monarch Money. Again, we talk about Monarch Money a lot. They are a personal finance app that helps you really take care of your money. Set yourself up for future success, wealthy success, whatever it is. For me, they've done a great job of really identifying places I spend too much money on, where sometimes you lose track of the little things, and the little things in aggregation build up into big things. That's true in all things in life. A little bit of exercise every day really adds up. A little bit of savings every day also really adds up. That's what Monarch Money helps me do. Right now, there's also a great offer for our listeners. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONCollege at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com/LOCKEDONCollege for half off your first year. Today's episode also brought to you by our great friends over at Game Time. And it's great to work with Game Time again because I've used them personally. They're incredible. Imagine being at these games with the energy of the crowd, with your buddies, watching your favorite team. Those are the unforgettable moments in sports fandom. There's nothing like experiencing a big game in person. Plus, it gives you curation of all sorts of tickets so you can find tickets for concerts, theater, comedy, whatever it is. Easy shopping. It's fast. It's simple. The best prices. You don't have to plan months in advance. Go over to Game Time. Get the greatest deals on whatever tickets you're looking for. And quite frankly, the easiest way to do it. I've done it in an Uber on my way to the stadium. That's gametime.com. Get the app, create an account, use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. That's LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. All right, let's jump back into this. Let's talk a little bit more about this game and maybe why it looked a little disjointed and what it means going forward. So one of the things we talked about before the show, and I really want to hit on this. You said they looked a little gassed. It looked like Tanji didn't have a bunch left. That's got to be terrifying coming into a matchup with BYU or VCU.
Yeah, exactly. I know you and I, we were discussing this earlier. I give Tanji credit, but you could tell he just didn't have the same juice, the same bounce. The committee, I keep harping on this, but they really put the Badgers in a tough spot. And I don't think only for today. I think you're making a really good point. Come Saturday, both VCU or BYU, whoever wins this game coming up, has a huge advantage just because both of those teams are coming off a lot of rests. Especially VCU had, they played their conference tournaments over a lot earlier, and BYU got, knocked off in the semis, I believe. So, yeah, you like to say these guys are going to get, a day and a half of rest, but they've played a lot of basketball in a short amount of time with travel. I'm a believer in the elevation. I've been out west quite a bit. It does factor in. So I don't see, I know the Badgers are doing what they can, but I do think that's a huge advantage and it's something to be concerned about going into Saturday.
What about Klesman today? What was your thoughts on Klesman's game? Didn't score. Had some issues defensively. Still had 4 assists, which he always gets those 4 assists per game. What were your thoughts on Klesman's game today?
Yeah, that was a great comment. I forgot. I didn't get to catch the person's name that talked about Klesman, that we need more. But Klesman and as a whole, one of the things I wanted to hit is, Kevin's exactly right, is I think they need more from their guard depth. Tanji and Blackwell need help. So if you look at Max today, to your question specifically, Ryan, McGee and Janicki, they were combined 2 for 8 from the field, 0 for 3 from 3, a combination of 4 turnovers. McGee had 3 of them, and Klesman didn't score, and he had 4 fouls. And we talked about Janicki. He didn't take a shot or whatever. He only played 5 minutes, but I can name 3 examples where he got taken off the bounce for a basket in those 5 minutes. So you look at those 3 guys, 2 of 8, 0 for 3, 4 turnovers, 6 fouls. You're not going to survive in advance with that kind of production. And you made a great point. Max did a good job running the offense, not forcing shots, which sometimes he can get caught up in taking some bad shots. Thought he didn't do that with the 4 assists, but they're going to have to get more. In 48 minutes, McGee and Klesman having a combined 4 points. That's not going to get it done.
And Aaron actually hits on this. You hit on this too. Everyone complains about Kless maybe shooting bad shots. He didn't do that today. He didn't force a lot of those late contested 3-pointers that sometimes people get a little frustrated with. So that's a good point. But you still got to get for a starting guard in the NCAA tournament, you got to get more than 0 points. Like, you have to get production there. You can't play an entire game and put up nothing, especially when you're getting not much from Janicki. And to your point, I didn't think it was a great McGee game. Like, a really nice finish in transition, but there were some forced shots from him. There was some early shots for him from the 3-point line that I didn't love. Again, without context, they're good looks, but in this game, when you had that opportunity down low, it felt like they were needless shots at times. Yeah, so you got to get something more there. Let me ask you this. Do you feel better or worse about this team right now after this game going into round 2?
Great question. Great question. I mean, my confidence level, I think they just, in general, we talked about it after the draw came out on Sunday. I think they have a hard draw either way, and on short rest and traveling. So VCU, BYU are going to be both really difficult opponents. I feel good in the sense that they did what they had to do today. It got hairy for a little bit, but they handled business, this and that. But like you said, I don't feel great in the fact that they need Tonje and Blackwell need help from the other guards. And like you said, it's been a while. McGee hasn't really played well for a while. Max has been battling his shooting all season. He's played well in spurts, not to say he's not playing well or contributing, but like you said, they're going to need, whether it's BYU or VCU, they're going to need a third guard to really have a big game. And, it's been quite a while from McGee or Max that we haven't gotten that performance from one of those guys. And in order for them to survive and advance come the next game, we're going to need somebody to step up. And I haven't seen it lately. So it's hard to predict that, coming here on Saturday.
Yeah. One of the things that Klesman does do really well for this team is that he just takes so much pressure off those other two, just in terms of handling the ball, initiating the offense. Their minutes go down. So there was a point in here made earlier that, this team just looks better with Kles regardless of his stat line. It's because, it just takes a lot of pressure off Blackwell. You can see he's fresher when he's playing 30, 31 minutes. Who was the player of the game for you in this game? I'm curious. I think there's a couple options.
Yeah, I don't like to take the low-hanging fruit, but and honestly, this is my answer. I'm going to go co-player of the games, and it's Xavier and it's Gilly, because I think Amos gave him a great spark on both ends of the floor. He made some big stuff, but Brian brought it up. He stepped up huge in this game. He was really good on the glass. He was really good defensively. And I'm telling you, from a coaching perspective, Ryan, and you've coached and you played, what Gilmore did in that first 4 minutes of that second half, you could see the crowd was getting into it, and they were pulling for the underdog. And it got down to 4, and Gilmore takes that 3, and he knocks it down. And then on the very next possession on the other end of the floor, he took the charge that I think that was Pridgeon's. Was that his third or fourth foul?
That was his fourth.
That was his fourth. And right there, that to me, that changed the whole dynamic of the game. So I would say Gilmore and Xavier were my co-players of the game.
Yeah, Gilmore's a great one. Because prior to that, Pridgeon played too. Pridgeon had scored 2 or 3 layups. Like, he had been dicing him up, and then they put Gilmore on him, and then Gilmore picks up the offensive foul after silencing the crowd with a 3 that, by the way, I was screaming at my TV, don't shoot it, go inside. Me too. And then he just bangs the shot. And you see him, first of all, Gilmore has so much swagger, man. After that, he gives the crowd the little thing.
That's a great point. Like, because I did the same thing when Gilmore took that when we were talking about shot selection today, he took that contested 3 early in the game, early in the shot clock. And I had some words for my TV as well. But what I love about Gilmore is, like you said, he gives 0 Fs, and, he's just out there doing his thing, and be damned what you or I or anybody else thinks, and just having fun. And I give him credit for it, because he really stepped up big once again for the Badgers.
Is it crazy if my player of the game is Stephen Crowell?
No.
8 to 10 from the field, 2 threes. Now, even on those threes, I was kind of like, dude, I love you to death, man. Get inside. But he started off the game with a really nice post move. What impressed me with Crowell in this game is typically when there's a bigger guy that's harder to move, he doesn't really do much. Like, he doesn't really work on him. He had a couple really nice post moves today on Sawyer. Hit a couple threes, 8 to 10 from the field. You can't get more efficient than that. Yeah, it was solid. I would say he's really solid today.
No, I agree. And that would have been my other choice, because, you brought up a good point, because we talked about it earlier in the week when we were breaking this game down. I thought if the Badgers were going to have to go small, they were going to have to take Crowell, out of the game. And, I don't recall any messed ups or weaknesses from Crowell defensively. I thought Crowell did a really good job keeping guys in front, moving his feet. I felt Nolan struggled more on the defensive end with Pridgeon and Sawyer more than Steven did today. And I thought he did a great job both offensively and defensively.
Yep, I agree there, especially defensively. Listen, he's a good positional defender. That's the thing that goes unnoticed with Steven Crowell. He's not good on the perimeter. He will struggle if put in a pick and roll situation. He will struggle defending the rim at times. But if we're just talking positional defense, like guard a guy in the post, he's pretty good there because he knows how to wall up. He has good size and he plays with some intelligence.
Yeah, no, and I think whether criticism comes in for the fact, and you said it right there, Ryan, is he's really good positionally. It's just, I think, the frustration that he doesn't provide rim protection. But just because he doesn't provide that rim protection that you would like to get in your footer, he's really good defensively. It's just, I think it's just the lack of rim protection that people get caught up with him defensively at times.
Let's wrap up here. We're going to go a little shorter today because I know March Madness is going on. Everybody's trying to watch games. So we're just going to do 2 segments today with Coach. But I want to wrap up here. Anything else that we missed in this game that really stood out to you?
No, I think we did a pretty good job, keeping it short and sweet. And, the one point I wanted to make was the lack of guard depth, giving, Blackwell and Tanji more help. You hit on it too. In order for the Badgers to keep playing in March and moving on, I think we're going to get a little more. I think somebody made a comment earlier too. Janicki needs to get his confidence back. I just think they're going to need more help off the bench or, from Klesmit, with guards going forward.
Just to come here, Jay says we don't have 5 shooters on the floor. Defenses are sagging back, keeping Tanji from driving. I thought he still had some pretty open driving lanes today. I definitely think at times defenses will sag on Tanji. When Tanji has the ball, there's just more attention there, right? So you're going to see a little bit more help defense there because they know what he's capable of doing. Yeah, I think my biggest thing is ultimately this is a 19-point win in March, and 4 seeds lose, 3 seeds lose, 2 seeds lose, right? There's a 1 seed that's in a battle right now. Like, this is not a super clean game. It felt like we could have put this game away earlier, but they did, to your point exactly, they did what they had to do. They moved on. It wasn't close at the end. We were not living and dying with every shot at the end. So moving on, round of 32, tough game coming up though.
Yeah, and I think, to Jay's point, I think what Jay's really seeing more is I think what's happening now is teams are going to take Tanji away. These teams, you're playing the best of the best. You're playing against the best coaching staffs. They're putting their heart and soul into these scouts. If I'm on the other team and I'm scouting the Badgers, I'm letting anybody but Tanji beat me. So I think to Jay, to your point and stuff, I think you're really going to see teams really key in on Tanji, take him away, especially if we're not getting a lot from Max or, Blackwell's doing a good job, but we're going to need other help because I'll be damned as a coach if you're going to let Tanji knock you out of the tournament.
Let me end on this one because this is actually a question I wanted to ask you. I started and then forgot about it. So Coach Max says there has to be a way to control how many 3-point attempts this offense takes. I just want to start with that question there. As a coach, when your offense is free-flowing and you've been preaching confidence, take open shots, space the floor all season long, it is hard to completely go away from that and say, go in the paint every time, right? Now, sometimes you have to because this team had a 6'8" guy and a 6'5" guy. But I'll just point out, it's not always as simple as just stop doing everything you've done all year, do something different. It's a tricky balance.
Absolutely. And to the comment Coach Max talking about here about how do you control the 3-point attempts, I don't think necessarily it's the number of attempts in itself. It's the type of threes you're getting. If you're taking a 3, as a staff and as a coach, if you're taking a 3 off a paint touch or a post touch where that ball's coming in first and then going out, you're drawing help, rotation, an extra man, and you're kicking it out for a 3 and you're taking 3s that way, I don't think the attempts numbers is a big deal. But if you get, and the Badgers do this quite a bit, especially against a zone where you don't even get the ball inside the 3-point line and you're just passing around the perimeter and you're taking a three or an early three or a quick three, those in my mind are the bad threes that the Badgers kind of fall into a trap sometimes, and that's where you can get in trouble, in my opinion.
I think that's really, really well said. I think it's really well said. I was watching the game with my 10-year-old, who I kept out of school today for reasons.
That's a good dad
yeah.
move. I like that.
Yeah. So we were watching the game together, and I told him, like Montana is perfectly good with us coming down, not passing the ball, and taking an okay-ish 3-point shot. They're completely okay with that. And anytime you're doing something that the other team is completely okay with, you're probably not maximizing the offense possession, is what I would say. So I think it's really well said by you.
Yeah, and I was kind of surprised, Ryan, because you and I talked about it. I thought Montana would go to a little more zone than they did, and I thought they'd go to it a little quicker, especially when the Badgers were kind of dicing them up against the man. So, I was thankful they didn't go to that zone a little quicker.
Yep, I agree. Although even there, I think eventually the Badgers figured it out. They just ultimately Montana didn't have a full deck of cards to play with against. So I think eventually they figured it out either way. All right, we're going to wrap it up there. So everyone go continue watching March Madness games. As always, super grateful for Coach jumping on, helping break down the game from a coach's perspective. On Wisconsin, tough game coming up. Bunch of content coming up, whether it's going to be BYU or VCU. We're going to cover it here on Wisconsin, and we will talk later.